Hello and welcome to another Q&A. Vision Quest version 2 pre-release. I want to thank everyone for submitting questions. I thought I'd take the time to answer these because it's been a couple weeks, almost a month since I posted that, and so I thought I would do this because I need to finish the updates. So I thought this would be a good way to procrastinate and talk a bit about what's coming in version 2. So we'll go to the sound room. And we'll go to my favorite Dream of 5 track. So let's talk updates. Let's see, we got 18 questions. Not all of them are serious, but I'm pretty happy with the turnout. So let's get started. From the top, Anonymous asks, why did you wait so long between the last release to make updates, and why is this version 2? This is a good question. So there were a couple things. One, after the release of V1 last year, my main goal was to make sure that the hack was stable and mostly fair. As fair as I could make it without broad sweeping changes. And so I made a bunch of smaller updates, about 19 of them in fact. I think it's V.19, 1.19. And I wanted to continue to gather feedback on that build to see how people felt about it as a complete hack, and knowing that even if I never went back to it, that the game would be in a stable place where people could play it start to finish with minimal issues. So I wanted to wait to gather more feedback to see as people played the game and as it started to get a reputation and see how people reacted to it and tiered it and things like that. I wanted to see what people said, and that would help inform future updates. This is version 2 because this is, in my mind, I've added more things to this version than I have in any of the previous updates that have come recently. And because there's going to be new chapters, because I have adjusted some stats and items in a more notable way, I felt that calling this version 2 highlights some of the additional polishing and balancing that went on in a broader context, and also signals like, hey, this is probably one where you're not just going to want to apply your save to a new patch. This is one where you're going to want to start off from scratch. So that's a bit about that. So I'm hoping version 2 will be, barring any bugs, I think this release that's upcoming will probably be the last, unless some animations finish that I've been excited about, that I would like to add. But other than that, we're fine. Good question. Second question. Anonymous asks, hello, Vision Quest is a fantastic hack and definitely in my top 10 of FE fan games. Thank you. I was wondering, would you consider porting it to tactile? I remember some issues surrounding OIM in the later chapters, and the support viewer and the credit viewer leading to bugged-looking map sprites and disappearing map sprites as well. With tactile, those issues would be rectified. I know you were looking to build files before, but having looked over tutorials for that, tactile looks easier to learn and use. So, my thought is, while you're right in that tactile might be superior for some of the issues that I've run into because of what I've done to this poor hack, tactile porting at this point would be a ton of work. And I don't know how to use tactile, and I'd have to learn it from scratch. And just knowing myself at this stage and knowing where the hack is, I feel like the net benefit of porting would not be worth the time spent doing so. So I'm going to have to pass on that, but it's a good thought. S.ask, Dreadfighter Gunner when? Maybe in the sequel. Pickle Lover asks, do you like pickles, and what is your favorite variety? So I'm not a huge pickle person, but I do like relish a lot. I like Mount Olive sweet relish. I take some relish, combine it with some mayo. Specifically, Japanese key pie mayo is my preferred for this, and I make my own tartar sauce that I make with fried fish and some French fries, and that's usually a good move. I haven't had enough pickles to really be an expert, but I would imagine the gherkin is a superior pickle. Random Wizard asks, what got you to come up with a lot of the memes, funny parts of Vision Quest? Where did you get ideas to say, have so much food dialogue, or for Honeydew's character? So, it's funny because, it's not up... I'll say this about just memes more broadly, or just things that are funny. It's not up to me to decide what is funny. It's up to people who play the game to decide what is funny. There might be some things that I'll add in that I think are humorous, but that might not land with the broader community, and other things might be more popular. And so it's hard for me to say, like, where did I come up with this stuff, because some of it was just like natural through writing. I'm like, oh, this would be a good chance for humor, or as I was thinking of a script around this particular moment, maybe I thought it would be funny. I don't know. It's hard to really describe my creative process in that way. I was not really like... I feel like a lot of the laughs kind of just like came naturally out of script writing. Where did you get ideas to have so much food dialogue? Dude, because I think one thing that Fire Emblem gets wrong is that no one talks about food, really. And it's so essential. And I was thinking a lot about, how do I differentiate these different places on the continent where everyone's a white person, basically? And I was like, it's gotta be food. People talk about food. And I think about, like, my life, and it's like, what do I talk about with people I meet? I talk about food. My life is food dialogue. And I think it's a really terrific way to connect with people and learn about other cultures. And I felt that one of the things that, kind of working back to that, one of the things I really dislike about modern Fire Emblem, or just Fire Emblem in general, is that one, no one ever talks about food. It's very rare. And then two, the modern games especially have become super tropey, and it's kind of like, this is my one trait. Here it is when I talk to these 10 different characters. And I was like, this isn't realistic. I don't talk about my individual traits that much, or my beliefs that much, or whatever. I'm probably just talking about food. I'm talking about what I've been eating that's good. I'm telling people how to cook stuff. And I felt that that would make for much more natural... It would be the cornerstone of much more natural character interactions. I always wanted the characters to feel more multifaceted, and I felt that food dialogue was a way to show a different dimension of their character and personality by kind of highlighting their likes and dislikes, but also just talking about something very grounded and real that they can relate to with anyone. We all have to eat, so everyone has something to say about it. We all have an opinion about food, and I think that's cool. Honeydew's character, oh man, I mean, I just kind of wanted this sort of like bumpkin. And then I just kept expanding, giving her more screen time, because Skryza was like, who is this? She's a bad unit. Why are you adding in this bad unit this late into development? And I was like, more Honeydew. Have a chicken guided, That was really, really it. I just kind of had the idea for this character one day. I was like, I want a female axe merc named after a fruit. And lo and behold, Honeydew took on a life of her own. Very surprisingly, was not expected. Like, if you had to tell me, Dan, which character would you have thought was most popular? Well, I have no idea. I don't know how it became Honeydew. But it's really funny that it did. But I hope that's helpful. Let me just take a swig of water here. Alright. Does this hack seem well received within the FE community, and does it deserve to have a sequel? It's kind of an interesting way to phrase it, wonder. But, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know if I'll ever do a sequel, but I'm glad that you see that the hack is well received. It's more well received than I ever would have thought. Mr. Green asks, how many Fog Wyverns will there be? I think only the Fog Wyverns in 1.6 and 4.4 are still going to be in the version. All the ones in 1.7 are gone. They've been gone for a while. There's Fog Pegs, though, in 2.3x. Indigo Nick asks, how to get Vigalis' personal bow? You have to visit the house with him in 1.10. He alludes to this in the dialogue, that the area is, like, kind of familiar. So if you deploy him and have him visit the house, that's how you get it. When is Chupapi Muñano asks, when is the release of the v2 LODS? LODS? I don't know. Probably soon. I'm supposed to finish it today. That's my hope, at least. I don't know if I'll get it out today, but I'm hoping to at least get everything done. I have only a few things left to do. Anonymous asks, can you add some character bios like in Sun God's Wrath? See, I don't like character bios. I'd rather people learn about the characters through support and make their own conclusions versus me just like listing out things they like and don't like. That's not how real life works. I don't just have a profile of like, these are the things I enjoy and these are the things I don't enjoy. I think you learn about that through dialogue and getting to know them, and I prefer people meeting and learning about their characters that way. Because you know what ends up happening? I put in a character bio, and then it's like it becomes very repetitive in their support. It's like, hey, I knew this already. It was in their character bio. Yeah, but it's one thing for me to tell you it on a piece of paper versus for you to experience it. So I'm anti-character bio in Fire Emblem. Anonymous asks, why is there so much food dialogue in this hack? Who doesn't like talking about food? I do find it fascinating that that's something that people get really like caught up on, is like, why are they talking about food so much? I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's a very natural digression from conversation. I mean, I would get bored if all I talked about was war and battle and my feelings. Like, I want to talk about food. So I want to talk about food, so the characters are going to talk about food, I guess. It's really how I feel about it. I don't know. It's something we do multiple times a day, eating. Something we talk about. Doesn't get fair enough representation. Let's see. Anonymous asks, hi Pandan. I had a fun time playing Vision Quest. Thanks to you and the friends for making the hack. You're welcome. Curious, knowing what you know now about making a hack, is there anything you would do differently, and if so, why? I like this question. I'd say, knowing what I know now, well, I made a video on like my regrets and reflections. Thinking back to that, the first thing that comes to mind is I used personal bases for units on the enemy side, which made scaling really convenient in the moment, but made scaling over time really hard. And this was a very newbie mistake that I made that's really hard to undo when you've made over 40 chapters, because I'd have to go back and rebalance every single one and check to make sure the numbers come back 1-to-1, which is quite challenging and not something I'm really ever going to be in the mood to do. And I'd worry that it would, I don't want to say ruin, because that's a strong word, but it would really change how that hack plays. And it's kind of at this place where Lycat plays, so I don't want to change it too much. If I was starting from scratch, I would do that differently. I'm trying to think what else comes to mind. I would have had more characters join earlier on. I didn't become a huge Iron Man fan until kind of like 3/4 of the way through development. And I was like, you know what? Iron Man needs to be how this game is played. I had a different perception when I started the hack than where I feel now. And I think one thing that I should have done is I should have front-loaded the cast a bit more. I definitely like back mid-load the cast. And so I think that kind of hurts overall flow. Like, you only have 10 units through Chapter 6, which feels really low. And while I think the early game is generally quite strong, I think it could have been benefited by having more options. Anything else that comes to mind about what I would do differently? I know I made that whole video about it, but these are the things that come to mind at present. And yeah, that's about it. Nano asks, Pandan, will you explore more of the lore you've created for Vision Quest? I mean, develop more about Yasuko, the heroes of the past, the different eras, or even use it for another hack? It's a good one. I'm not sure, honestly. I think I'm not someone who gets really hung up on lore. I like to make it up as I go and try and like contextualize it within the other things I've made. I feel like I've shared this before, but when I made Vision Quest, I started with the world and wrote short outlines of stories that I thought would translate well to Fire Emblem games. So I wrote like 4 to 7 scripts. Not even scripts, outlines of stories that take place in different parts of the continent at different time periods. And then I would just like kind of contextualize them and use them to build upon each other to establish more of the world. And I waited for the idea that really excited me to come to my mind, and that was when I wrote the story that would ultimately become Vision Quest about Storch and Titus and Groton. Because there were other ones that I wrote that would later inform things in Vision Quest. So like, for example, I wrote an outline about a priestess from Mahala who has a vision and wants to go see it through and like gets people to come on the journey with her. And that's the thing that's and Duck and Mango were characters from that who I later slapped into this. And they allude to this story in their support. So the name Hanja is the woman who would have done that. So that was like the main lord in this other story. And the whole aspect of that story was Duck and Mango go with her on an adventure, as well as like whoever else they meet, to like kind of like receive more of a vision at this church, and they find out it's a fraud and they just get bamboozled completely. And it was like a shorter hack. I had another one about like brigands and the cactus trade, and they were fighting over turf until one of them like gets into the run, like, you know, fighting like these different gangs, and all of a sudden it's like, uh-oh, the kingdom noticed us, and then like eventually like the ending is like you lose. It's like a defend map, and then it's like, oh, we can't go on, oh, what a stupid idea, and then they die. And there were like some aspects from that like informed how I characterized Freyung, for example, because I wanted Freyung to be kind of this like impoverished place where like no one really makes it. And that story kind of helped give me the context to do so, and like give Michael's character and Dreyfus's character and Cashew's character, Mango's character, it gave them all a little bit more of a reason for why they wanted to leave this country. So yeah, that's like some lore stuff. I don't know if I'll ever use it for another hack. I like hacking. I like making stuff in my spare time, but I don't know exactly what I'll use lore-wise, but I have some ideas. We'll see what happens. Anonymous asks, which chapters are you planning on changing the most? So where I landed ultimately is 25X is getting the biggest overhaul. It has an entirely new map. It should be a little bit more open and straightforward and less choky, so I think it overall plays better. The feedback I've gotten from playtesting is that it plays better. Other than that, I'm not really changing all that much. Some of the Part 2 maps have had items shifted around so that like promotion comes a little bit later. So it should help with difficulty. Inventories have been shifted a little bit. Maybe some enemies have changed, but it's overall, you're going to play it. If you've played it before, you'll be like, this is the same hack. It's not super, super different in most regards, but like a real discerning player will notice the small things. And then there's the two new ones. I was going to do 4.2 originally, but I couldn't think of a good way to redo it without totally scrapping it, and I'm okay with having like some hacks. I mean, some chapters are just not going to be as good as others, and as much as I want to improve it, I don't really know what I could do without spending more time on it than I really want to. Anonymous asks, hey Pandan, I am a fan of your hack and your videos. You talk a lot about different chapter types and missions. Is there anything you want to add to Vision Quest that is not currently in the release? It's a good question about like different chapter types and missions. At the moment, not really. I think part 2 is really experimental with objective design, like the chickens, as well as some of the side objectives that like really impact gameplay, like the logs. I thought was like a pretty fun experiment. That's one of the things I like about part 2 is that it got really experimental with how the game works, and I'm hoping that others will like take what I've done and like make something that's better, because you know the first time you do something is never going to be as great. So anything else I'd want to add to Vision Quest that's not currently in release? I kind of wish I'd had Thracia Escape. but that was a technical limitation when I started. It's crazy how much hacking has changed since I launched this 3 years ago. Since I started. There's so much new stuff. So there's a lot of things that I couldn't have done that I could do now. But those are some things that come to mind. Maybe like defending a specific point, or doing like some Project Triangle strategy inspired lighting the houses on fire. More like event heavy stuff I think would be interesting, but it's really time consuming. I've been experimenting around with some things a little bit in the background, and while it's fun and cool, it's also very time consuming. Anonymous asks, can you please change it so Katoot isn't a game over unit? I'm sorry, Anonymous. I'm sorry. So this is just the limitation. I didn't want to write A supports for... I didn't want the player to be incentivized to kill... I guess going back to that earlier question about like regrets or things I'd do differently, I wouldn't balance part 3 around Valuyo and Katoot having an A support. Because all it does is make her dying really annoying. Because I was like, oh, Pent and Louise have this, it's cool. And I forgot, like, when I designed this, that, like, Pent actually leaves when Louise dies and vice versa. I can't do that with a Lord. And so Katoot has to be a game over unit. Unless I'm okay. But I didn't want to incentivize the player killing off Katoot to get A supports with their characters. I think that's really backwards. And so I made her a game over unit, so you have to deal with it. What in specific will you be adding? Says Big Nut Nanny. You'll see. I'll make a post with all the changes. But they'll be announced in the thread when they're done. But it's mostly going to be some items get shuffled around, 2 new guided maps, a recipe book getting added to the guide. Some characters had their stats reworked completely. There's some new animations and palettes. Some updated art. Probably from a gameplay standpoint, the biggest change are going to be like some of the characters just having different stats. Especially like characters like Asane and Mael, Jay, Solani. They all had their stats tweaked. Cygnus and Menahem got buffed. Sarka got a little bit of a buff. Shoutouts to Laurent. So, those are a couple things. And the last question is, Anonymous asks, question. My answer is, answer. But that's everything. This was actually pretty quick. I do want to say thank you to everyone who submitted questions, and thanks to everyone who continues to support and play the hack. It's very humbling to see people just playing it, sharing their thoughts, enjoying it. It blows my mind how much people care, even still. But I'm glad that I was able to make something that people enjoy. I enjoy playing the hack. I hit my goal. Everyone else enjoying it is a bonus. So I'm excited to get these updates out. I do thank everyone for asking their questions, and then I'm hoping we'll have the definitive, complete Vision Quest experience on lock very soon. But thanks again for all of your support, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Be safe out there. I love this track. Alright, until next time.